It started with tire tracks, parallel impressions in the morning dew, cutting across my carefully maintained front lawn. At first, I thought it was a delivery truck, maybe a teenager taking a shortcut, a one-time mistake. But then it happened again, and again, until my once pristine lawn was a torn-up path of brown streaks and crushed hopes. I live in a suburban cul-de-sac just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. The kind of place where mailboxes are coordinated, dogs are leashed, and the HOA runs the neighborhood like a tight-fisted dictatorship. Rules are rules, and those rules are policed by the HOA president herself, Karen Whitmore. Karen is the kind of woman who smiles through her teeth while handing out fines like Halloween candy. Her hair is always in a tight bun, she drives a white Mercedes SUV, and she believes the HOA bylaws are not just guidelines, but scripture. Everyone in the neighborhood either fears her, avoids her, or pretends to be her friend. So when I saw the same Mercedes SUV pulling into her driveway just 2 houses down, I put 2 and 2 together. Karen was the one cutting across my lawn to shave 10 seconds off her daily drive. I decided to be civil. "Karen," I said, catching her as she pulled into her driveway. "I think you've been driving across my lawn. It's causing some damage. Could you please?" She didn't let me finish. "Are you accusing me of something? Because I happen to be the HOA president and I know the bylaws backward and forward. Now, if your lawn can't handle a little tire pressure, maybe you should invest in better landscaping." And with that, she walked away, heels clicking on her driveway like a gavel striking down a verdict. That night, I documented the damage. Photos, videos. I even installed a motion-triggered camera facing my yard. The next morning, I had my proof. Karen's SUV, tires chewing through my Bermuda grass like it owed her money. I filed a formal complaint with the HOA. 2 days later, I received a fine. Lawn maintenance violation. Grass coverage insufficient. Patchy appearance in front yard. $150. I stared at the letter, mouth open in disbelief. It was signed by Karen. That's when I realized something important. Karen wasn't just ignoring the rules. She was the rules. And if I was going to fight her, I couldn't play by them. Section 2. The game of spikes. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers, takes root, and waits for the right moment to bloom. I stopped trying to reason with Karen. I started studying her. Her routines. Her routes. Her timing. Every morning, she backed out at 8:02 a.m. sharp, swung wide, and cut straight through my lawn to avoid the speed bump at the end of the street. Like clockwork. Like a predictable predator. So I got to work. I ordered stainless steel traffic control spikes, the kind used in parking lots where signs warn you. Wrong way, severe tire damage. But mine would have no signs. They'd be discreet, embedded under the sod, invisible to the untrained eye. It took 3 nights to prepare the trap. I lifted a section of grass just enough to nestle the spikes, angled them toward oncoming traffic, then laid the sod back over them like a freshly made bed. To anyone walking by, it looked like healthy lawn. But to a 2-ton SUV, it was a mouthful of nails. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, I stood behind my front window, coffee in hand, camera rolling. At 8:02, the white Mercedes appeared, backing out with suburban grace. Then she swung wide, tires crossing that same patch of earth as always. Except this time there was a hiss. Then a thud. Then a scream. Karen's SUV lurched and wobbled before grinding to a halt in front of my driveway, 2 tires flat, one shredded completely. I stepped outside, holding my phone. "Everything all right, Karen?" She was fuming. "There's something in your yard." "My tires." "In my yard? That's odd. I thought you said you never drove on it." Her lips thinned. "This is sabotage. I'm going to have you arrested." "I have it all on video," I said. "You've been trespassing and damaging my property for weeks." She stormed off to call the police. When they arrived, I showed them the footage. All of it. The repeated trespassing. The damage. The installed spikes, clearly on my private property. The officer scratched his head. "Well, ma'am, if your car was on his lawn, and he has it posted as private property." "Posted?" There's no sign. Doesn't need one, the officer said. It's his yard. Karen sputtered. But he set a trap. And you walked right into it. The tow truck took her car. The HOA meeting that week was tense. Karen tried to push emotion banning underground hazards, but the vote was split. People had seen the video. Some even clapped. The emperor had no tires. Section 3. The underground resistance. The HOA wasn't just Karen. It was a network. A system. But systems have pressure points. After the spike incident, Karen doubled down. She started enforcing every rule with new intensity, measuring grass height with rulers, demanding people repaint fences, finding a neighbor for hanging Halloween decorations before October. But she had lost her aura. Where fear once held sway, now there was resentment. I started talking to neighbors. Casual conversations at the mailbox turned into secret meetings in garages. It turned out I wasn't the only one with grievances. Ed had been fined for a garden gnome. Maria got a notice for her kids' chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Joe had a compost bin labeled a visual nuisance. We formed a group, the Fair Neighbors Coalition. We reviewed bylaws, documented abuses, and lobbied for a vote to recall the president. Karen caught wind of it. She sent out newsletters painting us as anarchists, accusing me of domestic sabotage, even suggesting that the spikes were a danger to children. But it was too late. The video had gone semi-viral. Local news picked it up. Suburban showdown. Man fights HOA tyranny with tire trap. The board scheduled a vote. Karen rallied hard, but the numbers weren't with her. The night of the election, we gathered in the community center. The air was electric. The vote was counted. 64% in favor of removal. Karen stood up, trembling with rage. You'll regret this. You think this is over? I am the HOA. But she was already history. Section 4. Green grass and quiet streets. Karen's resignation sent ripples through the neighborhood. A new president was elected, Maria, the mom who once got fined for chalk art. The mood changed almost overnight. The bylaws were reviewed, rewritten. Grass could be natural. Decorations could be expressive. We kept some rules for safety, for cleanliness, but the tyranny was over. Karen still lives in the neighborhood. She keeps to herself. Her Mercedes was never the same, and she stopped cutting through my lawn. Or anyone else's. I patched the grass over the spike trap, but left the mechanism in place. Just in case. Because in suburbs like mine, you never know when someone else might try to make their own rules. But now, at least, the neighborhood knows how to fight back. The day after I received the third HOA citation for unauthorized landscaping, I sat in my garage, surrounded by the faint scent of motor oil and sun-warmed lawn tools, staring at the paper in my hands like it was a death warrant. Karen had escalated. She must have seen me seeding the lawn to repair the tire tracks, her tire tracks, and instead of apologizing, she'd called a board meeting. They slapped me with a $500 fine, claiming my repairs altered the uniformity of the neighborhood landscaping. Uniformity? My grass was greener than ever. That was when I knew this wasn't just petty oversight anymore. It was war. I pulled out the plastic tote where I'd kept every HOA letter for the past 2 years. The stack was thicker than a phone book. I flipped through them, watching a pattern emerge, citations for overwatering, improper trash can alignment, even one for a shadow cast by my solar panels. Meanwhile, Karen's home had mismatched shutters, a rusty mailbox, and an inflatable flamingo in the yard for months. No citations. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. The next week, I tried to talk to a few neighbors to gather support. Most were polite but distant. I'd rather not get involved, Mrs. Patel said, eyes darting toward Karen's house like it might sprout ears. I got a citation, once for leaving a rake on my porch. Karen had the board reverse it for a price, whispered Mr. Jenkins, glancing at the ring cam on his porch. They're watching everything. They were afraid. I didn't blame them. I wasn't. I started documenting everything, photos, timestamp videos, screen captures for my security cameras. I had footage of Karen rolling through my lawn at least 4 times in the past month. She always did it late in the evening, tires crunching over my grass like she owned the place.
Why?
Because my house was on the corner, and her shortcut saved 30 seconds off the loop around the cul-de-sac. It was lazy and entitled, and she never once acknowledged the damage. I filed a formal complaint to the HOA. Included the video. Nothing. 1 week later, I got another letter. Retaliatory behavior against board members may result in legal action. Retaliatory? Documenting her damage was retaliation? That's when I realized the entire board was in her pocket. She wasn't just a member, she was the president. So, I changed tactics. Instead of escalating, I complied, visibly. I mowed my lawn twice a week, watered only between 6 to 8 a.m., planted HOA-approved flowers along the sidewalk. I was immaculate. Karen drove by slowly every morning, scrutinizing everything. Her Range Rover gleamed under the sun, like some kind of judgmental totem. But she couldn't find a thing. I even waved. She didn't wave back. But the tire tracks continued. She'd wait until dusk, cut the wheel just so, and rip through the corner of my lawn. I stopped receding. I left the tracks there, muddy scars on my otherwise perfect grass. Let them rot under the weight of her entitlement. That's when I started the real work. I ordered a batch of tire puncture strips from a company that sold to private security firms. Legal?
Technically.
Dangerous? Only if you were dumb enough to drive where you weren't supposed to. I didn't install them right away. First, I buried them beneath a patch of artificial turf I cut to match the existing grass. The area was marked with a Land Restoration in Progress sign, courtesy of a local nursery. Nobody would suspect a thing. It wasn't about causing damage. It was about deterrence. But then something unexpected happened. It was a Tuesday evening when I saw someone lurking near the corner of my yard. Not Karen. A teenager. Hoodie, skateboard, phone flashlight. He was filming. I stepped out. "Can I help you?" He flinched. "Oh, I'm just doing a TikTok thing." "This is the Karen house, right?" I froze. "What?" "Everyone on the HOA subreddit's been talking about it. Some dude posted footage of the lady driving through your lawn." I didn't post it. He pulled up the page and showed me. Sure enough, there was my footage, watermarked with my own camera's timestamp, edited and paired with captions like, "HOA tyrant can't drive straight, destroys lawn every night." It had over 800,000 views. And suddenly things started changing. The next morning, 3 houses down had signs that read, "Our streets are not her playground." Another neighbor was on his knees, digging up his old brick border to install steel edging. Karen didn't take it well. She doubled down, started sending citations to everyone. Overgrown bushes, political bumper stickers, a kid's bike on the lawn. But people weren't scared anymore. They were pissed. I found an anonymous flyer taped to my door that week. HOA meeting. Friday, 6 p.m. Clubhouse. Bring evidence. Someone was organizing. Not me. But I was more than ready. Friday arrived, and the clubhouse was full. I'd never seen so many neighbors show up. Karen sat at the head of the table, lips pursed, binder in front of her like a shield. "Let's begin," she said, gavel tapping once. A man in the back raised his hand. "We want to discuss the abuse of authority by the board, specifically ongoing harassment." Karen smiled tightly. "This meeting is not open to that topic." "We're voting to make it open," someone else said. Voices rose. A chant started. "Vote. Vote. Vote." Karen tried to gavel them down, but it was too late. Someone rolled in a projector. My footage began to play. I'd never seen her face go so white. After the meeting, Karen stormed out. She clipped the curb on her way out of the parking lot. I stood there, watching. She didn't speak to me for 3 days. Then, on Sunday night, just after 10 p.m., her headlights swung around the corner. I watched from behind my curtain as her tires rolled up, once again, onto the lawn. The spikes caught. There was a hiss, then a pop, then another. She tried to reverse. Another hiss. More cursing. Then silence. The next morning, a tow truck came. She filed a police report for property sabotage. I provided a copy of the security footage. The officer, mid-40s, tired eyes, probably worked nights. Watched the whole thing. So she drove on your lawn multiple times? Correct. And you placed a warning sign about restoration? Visible from the road. He nodded slowly, writing on his pad. Looks like she drove on private property. You got a citation for this? Many. He gave a long sigh. You won't be hearing from us again. As he left, I watched Karen through her window. She was on the phone, pacing, furious. The power was shifting, and it was only just beginning. Karen didn't show her face for 2 days after the tire-popping incident. Her driveway sat eerily empty, save for a sad puddle of oil where her Range Rover used to park. A few neighborhood kids left chalk drawings on the sidewalk in front of her house. One was of a car with 4 flat tires. Another just said, "Respect the grass." That's when the media showed up. It started with a local podcaster who specialized in suburban scandals. He'd caught wind of the viral video and wanted to do a segment titled, "The Lawn War of Willow Oaks." I declined an interview, but the footage spoke for itself. Next came a reporter from the regional ABC affiliate. He showed up with a cameraman, took some B-roll of the tire marks, the now infamous restoration sign, and the HOA clubhouse. A few neighbors gave off-the-record comments. Karen, of course, refused to speak. The segment aired that night. It was balanced, but it hit hard. Karen was painted as a controversial HOA president, while I was referred to as a homeowner defending his property. The closing line? This conflict raises an important question. When do community rules become personal vendettas? After that, the dam broke. Dozens of people from other neighborhoods started sharing their own HOA horror stories online. Willow Oaks became ground zero for a growing anti-Karen movement. Memes flooded Reddit, Twitter, and TikTok. A Change.org petition was started titled, "Remove Karen from the HOA board." Within 48 hours, it had over 6,000 signatures, even though our entire neighborhood had less than 300 residents. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all of us. And Karen knew it. She sent a community-wide email with the subject line, "Setting the record straight." There has been a recent flood of misinformation regarding actions taken by this board. As president of the Willow Oaks HOA, I have always strived to uphold the rules and regulations that ensure property values remain high and our community remains desirable. The email was over 1,000 words. Defensive, arrogant, tone-deaf. She claimed the tire tracks were fabricated, that she was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign, and even suggested the spikes were planted maliciously with criminal intent. She ended the letter with a thinly veiled threat. "Rest assured, the HOA is reviewing legal options." The next day, someone printed the entire email and posted it on a bulletin board at the local dog park, with annotations in red marker like, "Lie. Gaslighting 101. Nice try, Karen." Despite the threats, she couldn't stop what was coming. 2 members of the board resigned the following week. One cited personal reasons. The other sent a scathing resignation letter, calling the HOA's leadership authoritarian, petty, and corrosive to community trust. A special election was announced. I didn't plan to run, but someone else did. Her name was Nina Alvarez, a mother of 2, ex-military, and homeowner who'd lived in Willow Oaks for over a decade. She was tired of the abuse. She'd gotten 3 citations in the past 6 months for things like leaving her recycling bin out 10 minutes too long. At the next open meeting, she stood up and spoke with calm fury. "We bought homes here, not cells in a minimum security prison. We need accountability, not tyranny." The crowd erupted. Even Karen looked shaken. But she wasn't done fighting. That weekend, I noticed a new sign staked into the corner of her lawn. "Private property. Trespassers will be prosecuted." Irony must have been lost on her. Then came the anonymous letters. One slipped under my door, typed in 12-point Times New Roman, warned me to stop feeding the media machine. Another showed up in my mailbox, and signed, reading, "You may win the court of public opinion, but the real courts are still very real. Lawyer up." They were desperate threats, flimsy and laughable, but I filed them away. Documented everything. Every printed envelope, Every photo of her peering through curtains, every overheard comment from neighbors who were still afraid to speak up publicly. And I kept my cool. Until she escalated again. It was 3:13 a.m. when my phone pinged. Motion alert. I opened the app and saw a figure in a hoodie crouched near the corner of my yard, the spike patch. I switched to infrared. It was Karen. I zoomed in. She was pouring something from a jug onto the grass. Probably weed killer. I grabbed my flashlight and sprinted outside. By the time I reached the edge of the lawn, she was already halfway across the street, fumbling with her keys. "Karen," I shouted. She froze. "You know there are cameras, right?" She didn't answer. She just got in her car and slammed the door. I filed a police report the next morning. Showed them the footage. The officer recognized her from the tire spike incident. "Didn't she claim you were the one harassing her?" he asked, brow raised. "She did." He clicked his pen. "Not anymore." They issued a citation. A formal warning. One more and she'd be charged with trespassing. At the next HOA meeting, people showed up in droves. Nina walked in with a stack of signed proxy forms. Karen arrived late, visibly rattled. The vote to remove her from the board passed, 126-9. She didn't stay to hear the final count. Just stood up, muttered something about ungrateful fools, and walked out. For good. Her Range Rover was gone the next day. A for sale sign went up a week later. The new board disbanded a handful of Karen-era rules. They even held a barbecue in the park with a banner that read, "Welcome back, Willow Oaks." I went. So did Nina, Mr. Jenkins, Mrs. Patel, and the skateboard TikTok kid. We laughed. We shared stories. We finally breathed easy. As for my lawn, I let it grow wild for a while. Just for the hell of it. But eventually, I reseeded. Took out the spikes. Replaced them with a low brick border, elegant and unmistakable. A few months later, I got a small envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No words. Just a printed photo. Karen's Range Rover, jacked up at a repair shop, tires shredded beyond recognition. I couldn't help but smile. 6 months after Karen left Willow Oaks, peace had settled over the neighborhood like a long overdue summer rain. The difference was night and day. Gone were the daily compliance patrols she once insisted on. The mailbox citations stopped. The lawn inspections vanished. For the first time in years, people actually talked to each other. Kids played in front yards again. Neighbors waved without suspicion. And the grass? It had never looked better. But the story didn't end when Karen's Range Rover vanished. Not quite. Nina, now HOA president, had ushered in a new era. Transparent meetings, clear boundaries, a code of conduct that applied to everyone. She called it community, not control. I volunteered for the landscaping committee. I figured if I'd gone to war over grass, I might as well help plan it right. And for a while, life was uneventful. Until the envelope arrived. It was early November. My mailbox contained a thick manila envelope with no return address. Inside were legal papers stamped, signed official. Karen was suing me. The claim? Willful property damage, harassment, reputational defamation, and emotional distress. She'd filed from a city 2 counties over. Attached were photographs of her shredded tires, quotes from the subreddit, screenshots from the local news, and cherry-picked excerpts from community emails. She was trying to rewrite the narrative. She wanted $25,000 in damages. At first, I was stunned. Then I laughed. And then I lawyered up. My attorney, a woman named Jessa Marks, reviewed the case like a bloodhound sniffing out a weak scent. "She's throwing darts in the dark," Jessa said. "Most of this is circumstantial, and what isn't is publicly documented. You warned her. She ignored the sign. You had video evidence. If she wants to play, we'll play." We countersued for malicious prosecution and legal harassment. And while the case dragged through the slow-turning wheels of small claims court, something fascinating happened. The internet didn't forget. The subreddit rallied. People dug up old HOA documents from her previous neighborhood. Karen had been on the board there, too. The same pattern of abuse, citations, resignations, drama. She'd left under pressure. This wasn't just a one-time vendetta. It was her MO. By February, the case was thrown out. The judge cited insufficient evidence and made a note in the ruling. Property owners have the right to reasonably defend their land against repeated encroachment when clear warnings are ignored. I didn't get any money out of it, but I got something better. Closure. Spring came early that year. My lawn bloomed with thick green blades, soft to the touch, with flowers blooming neatly along the new steel edging. I installed solar path lights. Nina's boys helped me mulch the beds. One weekend, I caught an elderly neighbor sitting on my curb, sipping lemonade, watching the sunset. "This corner always used to feel cursed," he said. "Now it's the best spot in the neighborhood." I smiled. Took some convince. At the annual HOA meeting in May, I was surprised when Nina made an announcement. "We've had a nomination from several residents to recognize someone for service to the community during a tense chapter in our history." She gestured toward me. A few scattered claps turned into a standing ovation. I tried to sink into my seat. "We hereby name the corner of Willow and Briar, Peaceful Turn." A custom street sign was installed the following week. It wasn't flashy, just a small green sign with white letters. But it meant something. Sometimes, when I sit on the porch, I think about how close I came to losing my sanity over a patch of grass. It wasn't really about the lawn. It was about boundaries, about dignity, about standing your ground when the system is rigged. Karen thought she could bend the world to her will, but she forgot something crucial. You can only push people so far. And sometimes, the quiet ones, the ones who wave politely, mow their lawns, and mind their own business, are the ones who push back hardest when you trample their peace. Especially when you drive through their grass.